Hi everyone, I'm Jonathan Lamb and welcome to how to create animated slideshow transitions in After Effects. In this course, we'll go through the step-by-step process of how you can create one of these popular modern slideshow transitions. Starting with how you can use these ready-made templates found on Envato Elements, we'll go through how you can edit them to make them your own. Topics we cover will include how to create and edit different slideshow transitions from scratch, how to choose a color scheme and apply them to your projects, and how to include them into your project or presentation video. By the end of the course, you'll have a better understanding of these tools and how to make animated slideshow transitions in After Effects. So sign in or sign up and let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Modern Animated Slideshow Transitions course. In this lesson, we'll go through how to download, set up and use the transition template videos available in Envato Elements. The templates available on this website are a very quick and easy way to add these popular animations to your projects. To get them, first you need to sign up to Envato Elements and create an account. So let's head over to the front page of this website by typing in elements.envato.com. Envato Elements is a subscription service for designers, web developers, or anything in between. It includes an extensive library of different resources, such as graphic assets, fonts, stock images, audio, and of course, videos. Signing up is a straightforward process, which can start by clicking on the top right buttons here. And then once you've done that, click on the drop-down menu here. And this is where we can see all the different categories Envato Elements has for you to download. Find and select video templates, like so. And then in the search bar here, we're going to type in transitions. Like so. And then click on the search button. In the results page, this is where we can see all the different types of video templates related to transitions, which you can view and download. Scroll down and let's go ahead and see if we can find the one that we're looking for, called 50 Essential Transitions. Hover over the thumbnail to preview it, or click the download button on the bottom right of the thumbnail here to get the file. We can also click into the thumbnail like so to view a high resolution preview of the video that we want to download. Cool. So once we've done that, all we have to do from here is click on the download button and then head into After Effects where we can begin to work on them. Now that we're inside After Effects and that we've opened up the file, the first thing that we want to do is import the footage into the project. For this, we'll use two examples from Envato Elements. Now, to import our footage, just go to File, Import, File. We want to navigate to the folder containing our footage, and then let's go ahead and select the footage that we want, and then click Import. Once it's in the project, you'll find the file located here in the project panel. This means that we can now access them to be used for our slide animations. Now let's go ahead and create a new composition by going to Composition, New Composition. And from here, we want to change the width to 1920 by 1080. And this will allow us to use the same aspect ratio of our examples here. And then once you've done that, maybe keep the duration at 10 seconds and then click OK. And this will open up our new composition called Comp1. Excellent. Now let's go ahead and navigate to either the HD folder here or the 4K folder, depending on what resolution you need. Now we've just gone ahead and created a HD composition. So let's select HD. Open up the HD folder, and now you can see that we can choose what type of transitions that we want. So we've got bar transitions, circle transitions, linear, and triangle transitions. Cool. Now let's go ahead and use the bar transitions for an example. So let's open up this. And we can actually go ahead and open up these compositions just to see what they look like. So just scrubbing backwards and forwards in rectangle 01, you can see what that one looks like. And then rectangle 02, if we double click to open that, you can see what that looks like as well. Cool. So that's an easy way to view what these transitions are like. And to use these transitions, just going back to our example comp here, all you have to do is simply click and drag the transition into our composition like so. Excellent. Now, what you want to do from here is we want to now add our footage to the composition as well. So click and drag the footage and make sure it's underneath our transition. And then now if I scrub backwards and forwards in our timeline, you can see how the transition is now working with our footage. Excellent. Now, if you've got a second footage, all you have to do is click and drag the second footage here, like so. And we want to time the second footage so that it's at the halfway point of our transition. So just find the halfway point of the transition where it's filling up the screen. And let's go ahead and move our footage like so, so that it covers that point here. And then as the transition moves out like that, you'll see our second footage now reveals itself. Awesome. And we can also repeat this for different transitions as well. So if you decided that you wanted to use these circle transitions, for example, open up the circle transition. Let's go ahead and remove the rectangle transition here. And let's drag one of these circle transitions here on top of our footage. And all you have to do is make sure that your footage is below the transition for it to work. Excellent. Again, making sure that our secondary footage is at the halfway point of our transition, just so that it works. Now, including more transitions into our composition is really easy. All you need to do is navigate to what transition you want. So say, for example, one of these linear transitions, click and drag it into your comp like so. Move it forward in the timeline and then just time it so that you want it exactly where the next transition is going to be, like so. And then just making sure that the third footage is at the halfway point of the transition. I'm just going to duplicate one of these footages here, like so, just as an example. Move it in the correct place so that the transition reveals the footage correctly. And this is easily repeatable as well. So let's go ahead and add a third transition here. So one of these triangular transitions, place it on top, move it forward in the time frame, in the timeline where you want it to be. And again, just at the halfway point of the transition where it's filling the screen, create or drag your fourth footage. I'm just duplicating one here, just as an example. Bring it up in our layer order, just to keep things nice and tidy. And there we have the reveal. Awesome. So now we've got 4 or 3 transitions in one comp, like so. Excellent. So that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll learn how to create one of these transitions from scratch. See you all there. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Modern Animated Transitions course. In this lesson, we'll learn how to create a horizontal slide transition. So let's begin by creating a new composition in After Effects by clicking on the New Composition button here. And for this tutorial, we're going to go for a size of 1920 by 1080 with a frame rate of 30 frames per second and a duration of 4 seconds. So let's change this to 4 seconds here, like so. And then let's go ahead and name this horizontal slider. and then click OK. And then once we've created our new composition, we want to go to Layer, New, and Solid to create a new solid. And for this one, we want to just have a color of white, like so. Click OK. And this will act as our first slider element. Now you'll see that we have a new white solid layer, which fills up our preview window. And before we start to animate it, let's give it a few effects so that we can add things like color to it. So to do this, we need to go to Effect, and then we need to go to Generate and select Fill here. And this will automatically add a fill effect to our white solid layer, making it easier to control the color should we want to change it later on. Now, all we have to do is go to the Effects Controls panel at the top here, and then click on the color square to change it. So let's go ahead and change this color now. And we want to start with a nice blue color. Now, fortunately, I have the color code for this. So we're just going to go with 4CC3D9 to start, and then click OK. And then the next effect we're going to add is a subtle drop shadow effect. To add this, go to Effect, Perspective, and then Drop Shadow. Again, this will automatically be added to our layer, which we can then edit in the Effects Control panel at the top here. So for this, we want to make sure we have a color of black for our shadow, like so. Then we want an opacity of 17%, direction of 135 degrees with a distance of 5 and a softness of 88, like so. And this will give us a nice subtle shadow that will be displayed on top of our footage and other slider layers. Excellent. Now we're ready to animate our layer. So let's make sure that we're at the very beginning of our timeline. Let's select the white solid layer, press P to bring up our position. And then we want to go ahead and hit the stopwatch here to create a keyframe. Now we just want to move our timeline over to just over 1 second, like so. And then we want to create another keyframe. And then we're going to move about half a second in front of that. So at around here, create another keyframe. And then finally, we want to move to just over 2 seconds to create our final keyframe, like so. Now this is how we're going to animate our layer here. So for the very first keyframe, so make sure that our timeline is all the way over to the left. We want to go ahead and use the Move tool and move our layer to the left out of the viewer, like so. Then when we move to our third keyframe, so you can see now that as I'm scrubbing the timeline forwards, we have this little animation of our solid moving from the left to the right. And over here, we want to keep the layer for about half a second before moving it to the right here, all the way off screen, like so. All right, so for our first keyframe, we have a value here of minus 972. Then for our middle two keyframes, the value stays at 960. And then for our last keyframe here, we have a value of 2898. Excellent. So now if we go ahead and preview our animation, you can see how this is starting to take shape. Now, the movement or the speed of our animation needs a little bit of tweaking. So let's go ahead and fix that. So I'm just going to bring the timeline up here so you can see what I'm doing. Let's go ahead and click on the first keyframe, right click, go to Keyframe Assistant, and we want to select Easy Ease Out. For the second keyframe, right click, go to Keyframe Assistant, and then we want to select Easy Ease In. And then for the third one, go to Easy Ease Out. And then for the last one, go to easy ease in, like so. And now if we go ahead and preview our animation now, you'll see that the speed has improved a little bit. So it just makes the speed of our animation just a little bit smoother, like so. Awesome. Now all we need to do is duplicate these layers to add more color. So let's go ahead and select the white solid layer. Just going to hide the position here for now. And then let's go ahead and press Ctrl D on the keyboard 3 more times to create 3 more duplicates, or 3 more colors that we're going to use. Cool. Now let's go ahead and color in each one. So for the second solid, we're going to have a new color. So I think this one's going to be a yellow color. So the color code here I've got is FFC65T. So we've got a nice yellow color there. And so I'm just going to hide the previous layers here so you can see what colors we're using. And now for the third layer, we're going to select the third layer. And this color is going to have a orange color. So it's going to be F16645, like so. And then for the last solid, let's go ahead and make it pure white, like that. Cool. Now you'll see that the problem we have here is all of the layers are on top of each other. So we don't see all of the colors. So what we want to do is we want to stagger the animation a little bit. So in order to do that, what we want to do is let's go ahead and hide the top 2 layers for now. And let's go ahead and move our timeline to a position of, say, 0.8 seconds, and bring the second layer here, just so it starts the animation a little bit later than the first layer. And then for our third color, let's go ahead and move this forward to about 0.18, like so, and move that over here. And then for our final layer, we want to move this to about 1.4 seconds, like so. Then unhide that layer. You can see how each of our layers start their animation slightly later than the last. Now the problem we have here now is during this time here, we want all of our colors to pause slightly. So they all need to pause in the middle, and that needs to sync up as well. So for this, we need to adjust the layers individually. So let's go ahead and open up the position. So press P on the layers here. So on the second layer, press P so we can see where our keyframes are. I'm just going to hide the top 2 layers again. Now on the second layer, we want to move the second keyframe to about 1.12. So let's bring that there. So 1.12. And we want to set the position of this to 481. And so the same has to happen to the third keyframe. So let's set the third keyframe a little bit later as well. So 2.6. So let's bring that back over here. And we want to make this a position of 481 as well. And let's right click this keyframe and easy ease that. So you can see now we've got a nice pause in the middle here where both these colors are showing at the same time. And then for our fourth keyframe, we want to set this one at about over here, so 2.22, and then that should be fine as its final position. Okay, so let's bring out our third color, which is the orange. Press P on the keyboard to see where the keyframes are. And we want to set the second keyframe at 2 seconds, so just over 2 seconds, 2.02. and bring that over here like so. And we want to make this a position of -2, like so. And then on the third keyframe, let's bring this to 2.13, like so. And then we want to right click Keyframe Assistant and easy ease that. And then for our fourth keyframe, let's take this to just over 3 seconds, so 3.05. And move that, click and drag that over there. And then make sure that's its final value, which is 2,898. Excellent. So now as we scrub down here, you'll see that there should be a pause just over here. So our third keyframe, we need to make this value the same as our second keyframe, which is -2. And now, hopefully, you'll see a nice pause in the middle here, like so. Now let's go to our final solid. Press P on the keyboard to see where its position keyframes are. Now on the second keyframe, let's bring this to about 2.15 and bring that second keyframe over here. And let's put this at -483 as well. And then for the third keyframe, we also want to make this -483, but let's bring this to just over 2 seconds, so it's 2.2, like here. Right click, Keyframe Assistant, easy ease, and let's make this at -483, like so. And then for the final keyframe, which is going to be at 3.15, and let's make this 2898, like so. So hopefully at around the middle here, we'll have a nice pause where all 4 colors are showing. Now you'll notice as we scrub back and forth in our timeline, we've got these black spaces here that are showing. Now this is quite an easy fix. All we have to do from here is find out where along our timeline this color is showing. And let's go ahead and duplicate the layer. So let's name these layers first. So the first layer, let's right click and rename, or you can just simply select it, hit return on the keyboard. I'm just going to name this 01 for the first layer, 02 for the second layer, 03 for the third, and 04 for the fourth. Just to make it easily identifiable, we want to duplicate the first layer, so press Ctrl D to duplicate that. This will be 01. And then we just want to reduce the size of this layer, like so, just so that it covers the area where it moves. Now, first of all, we want to remove the keyframes. So press P on the keyboard, highlight these keyframes, press delete, and this should successfully hide that dark spot there. So press the I button here so we can see where the window is. So it goes from here to here. So that's where the dark spot is. So we can reduce that a little bit further. And then if we unhide that, you'll see it's now covered by the blue. And you'll see we've got another dark spot here. So this needs to be covered by yellow. So let's scrub over here, find our second layer. We want to duplicate that. Press Ctrl D, press P on the keyboard, remove the keyframes, press delete, and let's go ahead and cut this to where the dark spot is showing, like so. So I'm just going to see where the dark spot is. So it goes up to there and starts at around here. Make it shown again, and you'll see that we've got a nice yellow cover here. And then that's it. Cool. So now let's go ahead and press the play button on our preview to see how it works. Awesome. Now we have a nice horizontal transition animation. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we'll learn how to create a rotational transition. See you all there. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Modern Animated Transitions course. In this lesson, we'll learn how to create a rotating slide transition. So now that we have successfully created our horizontal slide transition, we're going to put this composition to the side for now. So let's close down and create a new composition. So let's close this here. And let's go ahead and go to Composition, New Composition. And again, we want to keep the settings the same as our previous transition with a size of 1920 by 1080, frame rate of 30 frames per second, and a duration of 4 seconds again. And then what we're going to do is we're going to call this rotating slider. And then click OK. Awesome. And then as we did before, we wanted to start with a new solid. So go to Layer, New, and then go to Solid. And then this will act as our first slider element. So let's go ahead and choose a color of white. Click OK. And then click OK again. And then now let's add some effects to the solid again. So we can have some shadow and add color to it. So to do this, let's go to Effect, then go to Generate, and then go to Fill, just to add the color effect. Now again, this defaults to a red color, but we can change this again later. And then the next effect that we want to add is that subtle shadow effect. So we want to go to Effect, then go to Perspective, and then go to Drop Shadow. Now again, this will automatically be added to our selective layer, which is the white solid 2. And now over here in the effect controls panel, we can go ahead and change some of the properties that we've got here. So make sure that we've got drop shadow selected, and we want to change the opacity here to 17%, a direction of 135 degrees, a distance of 5, and let's change the softness to 88. And this will give us a nice subtle shadow that will be displayed on top of our footage and the other slider layers. Great. So now let's go ahead and animate our layer. So make sure that we are at the very beginning of our timeline, like so. And now we want to increase the size of our solid to 200%. So let's open this up. Go to Transform, and then make the scale from 100% to 200, like so. Excellent. And now we want to place the position of our anchor point here to the bottom left. So let's go ahead and change the values of our anchor point here. So we want to change this to 1916.5 and the other value to 1076, like so. Now, if I zoom out here, you'll see that the anchor point is actually on the bottom right of our solid. So in order to change this, let's go ahead and click on the Constrain Proportions button here, which is this chain icon next to Scale. And we want to change the number on the left from 200 to -200, like so. And this will flip our solid so that the anchor point is now on the bottom left corner, which is exactly what we want. Excellent. So now let's go ahead and change the position of our solid so the corners of our solid and the corner of our viewer over here lines up. So let's go ahead and zoom in here a little bit. And in order to line these up, we need to change the actual position of our solid. So let's change the position values here to -4, and then the value on the right here to 1132. Excellent. And now you'll see that our solid is nicely lined up to the bottom left corner here. And now we're ready to animate. So let's go ahead and zoom into our timeline here a little bit. And we want to move forward to about 0.22 seconds here. And now we want to click on the stopwatch icon next to the rotation value. And this will create a keyframe. Now let's move forward to 0.23 and click on the keyframe button here to create another one. And now let's go ahead and move to the very start of our timeline. And we want to put in a value in our rotation to -90, like so. And this will create another keyframe. And then finally, let's move forward. And you can see as I scrub forward here, you can see how our solid is animating. So let's move forwards here to about 1.22 seconds. And let's input a rotation value of 90 degrees, like so. Awesome. Now, if we scrub back and forth, you'll see that we have this nice little rotating animation, like so. Excellent. Let's go ahead and change the timing of our animation just to make it a little bit smoother. So right click on the second keyframe here. And we want to go ahead to go to Keyframe Assistant here. And let's move this up so you can see what I'm doing. So right click on the second keyframe, go to Keyframe Assistant and select Easy Ease. On the third keyframe, let's right click this, go to Keyframe Assistant, and let's go ahead and choose Easy Ease Out. And on the last keyframe, let's right click that and go to Keyframe Assistant and go to Easy Ease In. Awesome. Now, if we go ahead and click on the preview button here, you'll see that we have a nice, smooth animation. Cool. So all we need to do now is duplicate this layer to add more colors. So let's go ahead and do this now. So I'm just going to close this down, select the white solid layer here, and let's press Ctrl D 3 times to duplicate 4 layers. Let's do that, Ctrl D, 1, 2, 3, and now we've got 4 white solid layers. And now all we need to do is let's go ahead and add some colors to each one. So I'm just going to hide the 3 layers here and select the first white solid. And over in our effect control panel here, let's select the color and let's change this to 347977, like so. And let's show the second one and change this color to 42A7A1. And for the third solid layer, let's change this one to CEE0E0. And on the final solid, let's change this to pure white. And then click OK. And then for each one of these layers, we want to move it a little bit further ahead of the timeline so that they start a little bit behind one another. So right now, all the layers are on top of each other. So we're only seeing the top solid here. So let's go ahead and change these. So for the second layer, let's move this one. Let's see, let's move this layer to about 0.5 seconds over here, like so. And then for the third one, let's move it to 0.10 over here. And then for the last one, let's make it 0.14, like so. Awesome. So now if I move this down so we can see our animation a little bit clearer and select fit to 100%. Let's move the timeline all the way to the beginning and click on the preview button. And here you'll see that we now have a nice rotating transition animation. Excellent. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we'll learn how to create a diagonal transition. See you all there. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Modern Animated Transitions course. In this lesson, we'll learn how to create a diagonal opening slide transition. So now that we've successfully created our rotating slide, we're going to put this composition to the side for now. So let's go ahead and stop this animation. And we can also close this down like so. And again, let's go ahead and create a new composition. So go to Composition, New Composition, and let's name this one Diagonal Base. Again, we want to keep the settings the same as our previous transition with a size of 1920 by 1080, a frame rate of 30 frames per second, and a duration of 4 seconds, like so. And then once you're happy with that, let's go ahead and click OK to create our new composition. Now, as we did before, we want to start with a new solid. So go to Layer, New, and Solid to create a new solid. And then we want to choose a white color. Click OK. And then once you're happy with that, click OK to create our first slider element. Now, as this is just the base, we're going to worry about the effects and the colors a little bit later, and let's just jump straight into the animation. So let's go ahead and open up our white solid here and open up our transform options. And in the scale values, we want to click on the constrain proportions button here so that it releases our values. And we want to enter a value of 175% on the right here, just to make our square a little bit bigger. Now, let's go ahead and rotate this by 45 degrees. Make sure we're at the very beginning of our timeline. And let's go ahead and click on the stopwatch next to position to create a keyframe, like so. Now, let's go ahead and enter a value in our position here to -563. And let's enter a value of 1909 on the right here. And this will make it so that our white solid is out of the scene here over on the bottom left, like so. Now let's zoom into our timeline here a little bit, just so we can see a little bit more of what we're doing here. And we want to move the slider forwards to about 0.23 seconds. And here we want to enter a positional value of 189 by 1125. And this will make it so that our solid here is sliding from the bottom left up into the middle of our screen here, like so. And then we want to move forward slightly. So let's move forwards to about 1.2 seconds. So it's like here, like so, 1.2 seconds. And then we want to click on the keyframe button for our position to create another keyframe. And then finally, let's move forwards a little bit more to 2.11 seconds here, like so. And we want to enter a positional value of -695 by 1869, like so. And this will make it so that our solid here moves into the middle and then back down again, just like that. Cool. Now let's go ahead and make the animation a little bit smoother. So let's go ahead and right click on our first keyframe. So I'm just going to move our timeline up here. right click on our keyframe, go to Keyframe Assistant, and now let's go ahead and choose Easy Ease Out, and then go to the second keyframe, right click that, and go to Keyframe Assistant, and we want to choose Easy Ease In. And on the third keyframe, let's right click that, Keyframe Assistant, and choose Easy Ease Out, like so. Now let's go ahead and highlight the first two keyframes, go to our graph editor up here, and we want to make sure that we're editing the speed graph. So right click on the space here, and then just select Edit Speed Graph here, like so. And then what we're going to do is we're going to click on the handle here for the keyframe on the right and move it all the way to the left, like so. And then let's go ahead and do the same with the other keyframe here. So if we go and select Fit All Graphs to View, like so. And in fact, let's go back and select both of these keyframes here like that. Go to Graph Editor. And over here, we want to select this last keyframe and move that to the left here, like so. Cool. And then once you've done with that, if you click on Fit All Graphs to View, you can see how we've edited both of our, or all four of our keyframes. Click on Graph Editor again to go back to our normal view. And then if we go ahead and let's move this down and fit this up to 100% and click on the play button here, you'll see how that we've adjusted the speed even more so the animation speeds up and slows down as it's moving, giving it a more natural look. Cool. So now let's go ahead and duplicate this white solid layer here. So I'm just going to stop the preview. Select your white solid, press Ctrl D to duplicate. And over here, we're going to change the position of our second white solid. So let's open this up, go to Transform. And over here, let's move all the way back to the very beginning of our timeline and change the position of our keyframes here. So making sure that we're at the very beginning, we'll change the first position to 2477 by -715, like so. And you'll see now that's moved to the opposite corner of our screen. Let's move to the second keyframe here. Select that and change the position of this one to 1717 by -51, like so. And you'll see now that it's meeting the other solid here in the middle. And then we want to do the same for this keyframe as well. So let's change this keyframe to 1717 by -51 as well. And let's maybe move this timing slightly to about here, like so, just so it's the animation isn't as robotic, so it's slightly off timing. And then we want to move to the very last keyframe here and change this keyframe to 2589 by -755, like so, just to move it out of the screen. Awesome. Now you'll see that our solid is just a little bit showing a little bit in the corner over here. So let's adjust that slightly. So we can also manually adjust that by moving it like so using the move tool or the selection tool. And let's go ahead and scrub back and forth in the timeline to check how our animation is looking. So I'm just going to zoom out here. Cool. Now don't be afraid to adjust the size of the layers as well if they need adjusting. Now you'll see that we've got this black strip over here. So I'm just going to click and drag this point here and the same with our other solids, just to make sure that they overlap slightly in the middle. So now as they meet, they both overlap and touch in the middle, like so. Awesome. Now let's go ahead and create a new composition. So click Composition, New Composition, and this time let's name this Diagonal Opening Slide. Cool. Again, keeping all the values as they were, and then click OK. And now with this composition, let's go ahead and place our diagonal base. So if we go to our project, click diagonal base and click and drag it into our diagonal opening slide composition like so. And you'll see now we've got our diagonal base as a layer inside our composition, which is going to be very useful when we are creating our slider. Great. Now we can go ahead and add some effects again, so we can have some shadow and color to our slider. So to do this, make sure we've got the diagonal base layer selected, go to Effect, go to Generate, and select Fill. And you'll see now that we've got this red color again to add to our layer. And now let's go ahead and add the shadow effect as well. So go to Effect, and Perspective, and Drop Shadow. Excellent. Now again, we need to change the values here in the Effects and Controls panel. So let's change this to what we had in the other two. So opacity of 17%, 135 degrees, distance of 5, and a softness value of 88. Cool. Now let's go ahead and duplicate this diagonal base 3 more times. So press Ctrl D, 1, 2, 3, like so. Now we've got 3 diagonal bases, each on top of one another. And as we did before, let's go ahead and move these layers further forward in the timeline to create our effect. So I'm just going to zoom in our timeline here a little bit. And let's move forward to 0.4 seconds and move the second layer forwards like that. Go to 0.8 seconds. And move the third layer forwards. And then finally, we'll move this 0.12 seconds and move the fourth layer forwards like so. Now let's go ahead and add our colors. So for the first layer here, let's select our fill and create a new color. And I'm going to choose a color of E19711, like so. This will be a nice orange color. And on the second layer, let's go ahead and put a color code of DFB910. And in the third layer, let's change this color to 279981. And for the last layer, let's change this to 4FBDA6, like so. Cool. So now we've got this nice color scheme for our transition. Awesome. Now, if we go ahead and click Preview, in fact, first of all, let's fit this up to 100% and click on the Preview button here. You'll see that we've got a nice modern diagonal transition. Excellent. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we'll learn how to add footage to these transitions. See you all there. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Modern Animated Transitions course. In this lesson, we'll learn how to download and add footage from Envato Elements. Now, to get our background footage for our animation, we're going to use Envato Elements, but feel free to use your own footage if you have them, and then follow along as we add our example footage to our project. So let's begin by going to the Browse button here and hovering over it, and then clicking on Stock Video. Here, you'll be able to browse through all the different stock videos on the website. We can also further refine our search by clicking on the Show Filters buttons here, like so. However, as we know exactly what type of video we're looking for, we can bypass this and go straight to the search bar, and then making sure that stock video has been selected in the item here, we can go ahead and type in real particle bundle, like so, or real particles bundle, and then click on the search button. Awesome. Now we have a whole list of results that we can use as our example footage. So let's go ahead and click on the one that you like most. I'm going to go ahead and choose Real Particles Bundle 2, Heavy Particles, and then click on the download button here. Once you've downloaded the video, it's time to head back into After Effects. Back in After Effects, we have our slide transition animation ready and waiting for our footage to be added. Now to do this, simply go to File, Import, File, and then we want to navigate to the folder containing our footage. So let's go ahead and select our video and then click Import. And then once it's in the project, it will be found in the project panel here, like so. Now let's go ahead and create a new composition. So go to Composition, New Composition, and then make sure that the width and height are the same as our sliders. So 1920 by 1080 with a frame rate of 30 and a duration of 10 for now. And then click OK. And I'm just going to go ahead and close our other compositions so that we've only got our new composition here, like so. And then now from here, all we have to do is click and drag our footage from our project panel into our new composition, like so. And you'll see we've got our footage inside the timeline, like that. And then from here, we want to add our transitions. So choose which transition you want to use. So let's go ahead and choose our horizontal slider, click and drag it, place it on top of our footage, like so. And you'll see that our slider is working nicely on top of our footage. Excellent. Now, if we have a second footage that we want to transition to, all we need to do is click and drag the secondary footage on top of our first footage, find the halfway point of our slider. Now you'll see that our slider gives us plenty of time to transition to the next footage. So let's go ahead and just find the halfway point of the slider, like so. Click and drag the secondary footage to that point. And then as we scrub forwards in our timeline, you'll see that the secondary footage has now been revealed. Excellent. Now again, we can also add more transitions into our composition. So say, for example, we wanted to add the rotating slider. Let's click and drag it into our comp. Move it forward in the timeline to where we want it to be. And then again, at the halfway point of our slider, let's go ahead and add a third footage here. So I'm just going to duplicate one of these, place it on top of our layer, and then move it to the halfway point, like so. And then you'll see after that, it will be revealed after our second slider has finished. Now, whenever we want to add more sliders and footage, it's important to remember to keep all these sliders grouped together. So if you wanted to add a new slider, like so, just click and drag it on top of our sliders here, like so, and then just go ahead and drag it further in the timeline. And the same for our footage as well. So whenever we add a new footage, so let's say this is our new footage here, just make sure you click and drag it to the very top of the stack containing our footage. and then drag it forward in our timeline, like so. So you'll see here, we don't have quite enough seconds for our third slider. So just right click here, go to composition settings, and let's go ahead and add a few more seconds to our timeline. So let's change it to maybe 20 seconds, like so. Let's zoom out of our timeline a little bit. And then again, we want to find the halfway point of our slider, slide our footage to the halfway point. Again, making sure it's at the very top of where all the rest of our footage is. And again, making sure the transition is, or the new transition is at the top of our previous transitions. And then everything should work nicely. So here we've got our first transition, our second transition, and then finally our third transition. Excellent. And you can continue to add on top of that if you wish. So with that, we've come to the end of how to create an animated slideshow transition in After Effects course. Now that you understand the basics of how to create a slide transition animation, you can experiment with different ones of your own, such as using different colors, different directions, and adding different types of footage. I hope you've learned a lot in this demo and that you can apply these skills to your own workflows. I hope that you've learned some new things in After Effects that you haven't been able to use before, and that you can use them to create your own future animations and designs. I had a lot of fun creating this course, so thanks for watching, good luck creating your own modern slide transitions, and I'll see you next time on Tuts Plus.